We'll take a
Okay,
minute.
sir. You are
Okay.
a host now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you very much, Firoz. Let me. So we'll start this new block. Just a second. Okay. We'll start this new block called Transnationalism, Diaspora, and Citizenship. And we are starting with understanding diaspora. In fact, as I read more and more about diaspora, one thing becomes extremely clear that it's extremely gray, and there are a lot of authors and scholars who use diaspora in different terms. In fact, when I was reading the course contents that have been sent to you, the self-learning module, there is a lot of. Hello. Somebody's mic has remained switched on. Shilpa, can you switch off your mic? Okay. So, are you able to hear me properly, guys? Are you able to hear me properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So, in fact, when I was reading the SLM, the self-learning module, uh, there was a lot of ambiguity. For example, when does a group of people or a community become a diaspora? Uh, So, for example, if there is a person who travels from, let's say, Bihar in India and travels to Kerala in India from the east to the south, does that person or a set of people become a diaspora? So, is diaspora a only thing that we are talking whenever we are traveling from one nation to another? Is it a deterministic process that as soon as people travel from one nation to another nation, they become diasporas? What is the process? Is there a deterministic way, or it's a precondition, or there are reasons how diaspora comes about? There are a lot of questions onto that. So, in fact, we will try and understand some of them. I have, again, as I said, I have taken the framework of the SLM, the self learning module, but I have deviated to bring in some more perspectives. In fact, it's very important to first understand what diaspora is before studying questions about diaspora and migration. In fact, we did this move whereby we studied cases, and now we are coming to the theory. Either which way, understanding what diaspora is and how there is a lot of gray area in terms of various scholars defining it what. And as I said, I always start, or in scholarship or academics, always start with definitions and who's defining them and how are things changing. So let's try and take this understanding for people who have joined for the first time. For the rest, the process is the same. At any moment of time, you need to ask a question. You can stop me. You need to add something or show an example or show another perspective. Just stop me. You can interrupt or raise your hand or whatever, or send me a chat or whatever. So, objectives is the meaning of diaspora, associated links between globalization and diaspora. And obviously, what started off in terms of diasporic studies has totally changed because there is a lot of things which have been added. So, for example, today, a lot of groups self-define themselves as diaspora, whether they fall into the category of the larger definition of diaspora or not, but people are defining themselves as diaspora. And we need to understand what. So I have, collated a lot of perspectives. So let's start with migration. Migration is defined as an act of crossing an international border or relocating within a state. So inevitably, a person traveling from Bihar to Kerala is migration. At the same time, a person traveling from Bihar to, let's say, US is also migration. Applies to any form of human migration, regardless of its length, composition, or origin, encompasses refugees, displaced people, uprooted citizen, and economic. And you can add climate migrants. There are all new terminologies which are coming in. For people who are joining, I've just started. I have started by defining migration. And we were asking this question, or we were talking aloud as to when does migration becomes diaspora? Every time a person migrates, does it automatically become a diaspora? If that is the case, then diaspora becomes a pre-existing condition, which is not the case. Diaspora mobilization, there are specific conditions on diasporic mobilizations, how this happens, etc., etc., etc. So this is what we have been talking about is migration is not a modern phenomena. As I keep repeating, story of humankind is a story of migration, a story of movement. It's a permanent characteristics of human society. Individuals have migrated from region to region, nation to nation. According to IOM, there are about 1 billion migrants worldwide at present. Now, I am not sure what present is this. This is 2021, 22. I don't think so. It's 23. So it's either 21 or 22. And when we look at this, Colin Palmer noted based on archaeological evidence, all of humanity may be considered part of African diaspora. If diaspora is simple case of migration, then the whole world is nothing but an African diaspora because modern human being originated in Africa. Earlier theories talked about East Africa. Subsequent theories talked about multiple places in Africa where human beings evolved. If all movements of people do not result in diaspora, then what distinguishes diaspora from other movements? So obviously there has to be a reason why it's called diaspora or why that term diaspora has been given diaspora. And when we look at this, it's very important to see this map of the Great Migration, which actually tells the story of the human history. So if you do a genetic testing on various populations, you will see that inevitably everybody carries a certain part of the African gene. And I found this map on the net. If you Google search on Google Great Migrations, you will come across this. This is a fascinating thing in terms of Y chromosome and mDNA, etc., where essentially people traveled and are traveling all the time. So it traces the history in terms of how it started, what were the bigger migrations, how things moved about, and how the planet was the Earth mass was much different a lakh years ago, how things have changed, etc. So we start with the introduction in defining the term diaspora derived from a Greek verb. I scatter, I spread about, which in turn is composed of dia, between, through, across, and verb sperio, I sow, scatter. So basically, across and scatter. So movement and scattering. And when the term diaspora hence means scattering, so essentially, if I was to look at it plain without any nuances, a simple migration should be diaspora, but that's not the way it goes about. The oldest known use of the word diaspora in English is in 1594, so it's a pretty recent word. The word, as even though the word has been used earlier, but in English has been used in 1594 translation of Lambert Deneu's commentary on the 12 prophets. The current entry of diaspora in Oxford English Dictionary dates back to 1694. So the whole concept of diaspora, diasporic study is a very recent, subject of study. And we'll see why it is also, become so fashionable today. Why? So there are many reasons why self-defined diasporas have proliferated in recent times. In fact, in recent times, there are a lot of people who have defined themselves as diaspora. Mass movement of people, End result may or may not be diasporization, are even more common now in the ancient world. There's this scholar who has also seen the word diaspora in terms of eggplant or a cream plant diaspora, corporate diaspora, and so on and so forth. So multiple categories of diaspora have been, self-defined. Communication and transport technologies greatly facilitated international movement, and that's what has happened in the recent times. Because of globalization, there's a global connectivity. The modes of transportation have become better. Geopolitical partitioning, restructuring of global economy, patterns of warfare, create large refugees, exile population have all transferred the world. So fewer and fewer people are today living in a land of their ancestors, which is, even if you look at just India, large number of people are not living where they were born or where their ancestors were. People have been moving. Some might argue that nation state itself is in crisis, that personal allegiances are increasingly defined. Clifford, ethno-national communities are increasing, generating bodies of scholarly literature that adopt the construct of diaspora. That, mind you, the term adopt the construct of diaspora. Whether they are diasporas or not is a different thing, but they adopt the construct of diaspora. Even as diasporic populations proliferate, community scholars have one legacy. Immigrants have begun to be called a diaspora. For example, Dipankar Gupta refers to Punjabis who moved to Delhi after 47 from West Pakistan as refugees or diasporic populations. And if you look at it, these are two nations now. So it actually becomes a diasporic population if you look at it. So over a period of time, self-categorization has happened. How and how it is defined, how it is as a point of view. So let's again, whenever in doubt, go back into history and see what typically happened. Initially used to describe the migration of Jewish people after the fall of Jerusalem. So more often than not, the larger part of early diasporic studies or diasporic literature is about the Jews. Until relatively recently, the term was most closely associated with dispersion of Jewish people, although there are extensive historiographies of Armenian, Greek, and African diasporas. Now, again, for example, the African slave trade are typically not looked as diasporas. So somewhere down the line, the concept of ethno-nationalism, the concept of nation states, ethnicity, and nationalism have come and corrupted the whole concept. To get diasporic studies into the present state, the concept of diaspora did not figure prevalently in social science. So 60s is typically the earliest when diasporic studies started being a part of social sciences. The use of plural form came later. Its Greek origin, the term formally referred to the Jewish experience. So again, as I said, a lot of early studies and literature have been on the Jewish experience. Also, a lot of diasporic studies are ethnographic. That means the researcher is actually looking at a particular community and studying that community. Now, what typically happens is when you are focusing on a particular community, then inevitably remember each community's and each person's experience is totally different in terms of migration, etc. So more often than not, there was a lot of confusion. The term then carried a sense of loss because the earliest studies have been about Jews. So the term carried a sense of loss as the dispersal of Jewish population was caused by the loss of territory. The concept of also now, in fact, over time, the concept has also been used as positive through much less influential way to refer to Greek, for example, Greek colonization of Mediterranean from shores of Turkey, Crimea. So all these kinds of things have been happening historically to influence diasporic studies. William Safran was possibly credited for the first for being the first person to in 1991 to set out 6 rules to distinguish diaspora from migrant communities. And how he determined these rules, remember, this was pre-internet. The internet was still, electronic communication had already started, but this is still pre-internet. 6 rules: maintains a myth or collective memory of their homeland, alienation from host land, regard their ancestor homeland as their true home, to which they will eventually return, being committed to the restoration or maintenance of that homeland, relate personally or vicariously to the homeland to a point where it shapes their identity. In fact, if we look at non-resident Indians, especially in America, who traveled much earlier, their concept of India still is the concept of India of the 60s, 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. They do not know that India is much different than what their concept of India is. They still look at India, and that typically happens with diaspora, the myth or collective memory of the homeland. So people who have, so for example, after the partition, people who moved from West Pakistan or West Punjab into India, or the people who moved from East Bangladesh into India, or vice versa, have they still carry the memories of their home, what they was before the partition. And unfortunately, after 47, India and Pakistan as two nations came about, and in 71, India and Bangladesh and Pakistan, three nations became. But these people still carry on with their same memories. So if you were to come across a partition survivor, uh, they will still tell you about their houses, their memories, where they played, etc. There is this myth or collective memory of their homeland. So you'll come across still a lot of old people who talk about how British rule was much different, how we have become like this, etc., etc. So there is this the concept of memory which comes about. Safran's definition was obviously influenced by the idea of Jewish diaspora. In fact, all earlier scholars, more often than not, were influenced by the concept, by the idea of Jewish diaspora, uh, and hence they included a criteria of being forced into exile by political or economic factors. It was only in 1997 that Cohen argued that diasporic group could leave its homeland voluntarily and assimilate deeply into host cultures. And that's what has been happening. In fact, again, history of humankind, there has been voluntary migration. So, for example, when human beings first came out of Africa, nobody forced them. It was voluntary based on various factors. It could be a factor of movement, of seeing the unknown, or it could have been a factor of shortage of food. Whatever be the factor, they voluntarily moved. Cohen places greater emphasis on another feature, ethno-national consciousness, and importantly, on whether a group not living in its homeland had the option of choosing between return and making a permanent home in diaspora. So, for all, there's a lot of, there's this discussion about all those NRIs who try and give advice on to Indians on the conditions in India. A lot of people said they should actually come back and stay out here rather than giving that advice. But that's a separate topic altogether. Roger Brubaker also noted that the use of the term has been widening, used the WorldCat database to show that 17 out of 18 books on diaspora between 1900 and 1910 were Jewish. And that's why Safran's first definition or conditions of diaspora was very clearly influenced by by the work on Jewish diaspora. Majority in the 60s were also about Jewish, but in 2002 onwards, people started looking at other diasporas besides the Jewish diaspora, and then they realized that there was many more factors onto the diaspora formation rather than only losing a homeland or being forced to move out. Conceptual, most earlier discussion, conceptual homeland that were concerned with paradigmatic cases or a small number of core cases, was of course the Jewish diaspora. So inevitably, one thing is very clear, that the whole concept of diasporic studies started with the Jewish diaspora. And somewhere down the line, a lot of people got influenced by that particular conditions and were looking at other diasporas from the same lens. The dynamics and characteristics of migration and dispersal are critical in understanding how diaspora population develops. So again, it's not a predetermined or pre-characterized or a pre-existing condition. It's not that as the person moves, it becomes a diaspora. There are other factors. Kim Butler distinguished many distinct modes of dispersion, each develop its own diaspora ethos, mutual memories, myths upon which particular form of imagined society was. She distinguishes six forms. So Kim Butler distinguishes six forms: captivity, state eradication, exile. Uh, so again, Praful is asking how religious rigidity affects diaspora. Uh, See, inevitably, when people migrate, they carry their culture along to wherever their migration. Religion is a definitive form of culture. So, for example, Praful, I don't think so. You were in a class when we started these units where we had this case study where there were these girls from teenage girls from Kerala who went to Germany to become nurses. Uh, and inevitably, one of the factors which these girls did not even know English or German, they only knew Malayalam. And they, at that time, the modes of transportation, this is a question of 60s when Germany was rebuilding, they needed caregivers. And these girls went from Kerala, from villages in Kerala, and one of the ways they were able to integrate or assimilate or feel comfortable was religion. For example, they were Christians. And the Christian church, in fact, the church was the one which organized this movement. So religion becomes a part of the culture which helps you acculturize or assimilate or integrate, etc. Praful? Praful, have you heard me? Okay. So, forced or voluntary exile, immigration, and migration, and imperial. So, in all these, I will just take up two of them. How Kim Butler talks about immigration. She talks about immigration forms of definitive separation from homeland is the cumulative results of individual initiatives. Inevitably, whenever people emigrate, it's an individual initiative. In its simplest individual form is a permanent relocation to a single locate. So, for example, a whole lot of professionals from India emigrated to the US in the 60s. In fact, the 60s, 70s, 80s, there was this concept of brain drain where educated youth, not finding enough opportunities in the country, emigrated to the US, and that's where they have made up their careers. Hang on. Okay. It's a permanent recollection to single location. That's specifically on immigrants to multiple destinations from a single homeland. So that is about immigration, multiple destinations. Typically, the result of intolerable economic conditions may take an extended period of time for groups to develop a diasporic identity. I'm still not completely made it clear how then a migrant and diasporic identities come about. We will see as we go about. Kim Butler talks about the second area, which is called migration. In contrast to immigration, some diasporas arise out of migratory patterns, come and go, but institutions and networks become established in hostland. So, for example, it's quite possible that people go for short duration, and yet some institutions and networks become established in hostland. Say, for example, if you look at the fact in Delhi, there is a Tamil society, there is a Kannada society, there's a Oriya society, there is a society from the east. So all these societies are more like an institution or network for migrating individuals. So now people from, let's say, Tamil Nadu or Kerala can come temporarily for a job to Delhi, say for example, they are in a government service or a private service temporary, but these societies, which are networks and institutions, remain. So whoever comes from Kerala or Tamil Nadu or Bihar or Orissa, once they come to Delhi, they can hook up with this network and join these institutions, and uh, again, are in the same culture as what is there in their homeland. Similarly, when people go for say in a foreign, okay, Naman is writing, in a foreign nation, the Indian diaspora practices religion for inner peace and strength. In an alien culture, therefore, there has been a migration of priests as well, who just performs ritual. Naman, not only Indians, it is the state for all diasporas. Religion becomes a thing too. As I said, it's a part of the culture. So the way we hold on to our own food, for example, when Indians, let's say, who are vegetarians, go to Western nations where there is a lot of non-veg, what typically then happened is some of these Indians then went about opening up Indian restaurants to cater to the Indian and the South Asian public who are vegetarians, or the Indian curry, which is now very well known across the European states, is basically to make people who are coming from India and the South Asia feel at home. You are right. Thank you, Naman. A comparative analysis of bank needed to determine whether or not this is a necessary distinction, relevant difference. Diasporan communities formed with improved transportation and community resources. Seasonal migration has been made possible over increasing distance. In fact, today, going to, let's say, US and back is fast, much faster than what it was earlier. By going to a ship, it would take months. Today, people can take short trips, jobs, vacations. Every time a person migrates, need not becomes a diaspora, but then let's say a consular becomes an institution where an Indian can check in case there's a problem. So now look at diaspora. Most diaspora scholars seem to agree upon three basic features of a diaspora. The difference between diaspora and a migrant. First, after dispersal, there must be a minimum of two destinations. The diaspora implies scatter rather than transfer from homeland to single destination. So there has to be two destinations or two generation of people. This specific type of dispersal is necessary precondition for the formation of links. So inevitably, look at the fact that whenever you travel, if you're going for a short travel or a short trip, you more often than not are not going to form links. But when you are traveling frequently, you do form links. You try and find people from your place or your area or your state or your country, because that's how you and because these are alien cultures, you try, these are the ways you find security. The internal networks linking the various segments of diaspora are unique features that differentiates that from communities that result from other type of migration. Migrants, for example, if I'm working in a corporate and I have to go out for a job, more often than not, I'm going to be looking at my team. I'm going to be looking at my team. I'm going to be looking at short-term friends. I'm not going to be going and finding out my cultural people or my homeland people, etc., unless there is, other conditions. I'm in trouble or I'm there for an extended stay. Second, there must be some relationship to an actual or imagined homeland. Whatever the form of this bond, it provides a foundation from which diasporic identity may develop. So earlier, when forced labor or bonded labor or indentured labor, when they were taken forcefully or voluntarily from their homeland in India, they would carry pieces of their religious artifacts or other artifacts to remind them of their home. So that is the foundation where the diasporic identity will develop. They'll remember that of homeland, the food or rituals, and more often than not, possibly food might be not be the one, but rituals is something that you can do wherever you are. And that is why religion becomes a very important cultural marker. You may not find the clothes that you wear, you may not find the food items or the ingredients, you may not have the language to be spoken, but religion is a personal thing and you can do those rituals at your place to feel secure. That's why religion becomes a very important marker. Third, they must be self aware of the group's identity. Are consciously part of an ethno national group. Consciousness binds the dispersed people not only to the homeland but to each other. You go to the west or any country, and you are an Indian, you are a Punjabi, you are a Keralite, you are a South Indian, then the caste, the religion, etc., etc. So three reasons: minimum of two destinations, some relationship to the actual or imagined. And remember, note actual or imagined. So for example, Palestinians, or we talked about what was that, who are scattered in Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. What, I am forgetting that community. So they have an imagined homeland. So a lot of communities have an imagined homeland, but there's a relationship. And third, self-aware of the group's identity. Not Armenian, Kangat. I'm forgetting, who were chemically bombed in Iraq. That name is just slipping out of the Kurds. Absolutely. Shrestha. Thank you, Shrestha. Kurds. The Kurds have an imaginary homeland, so they don't have a nation per se. Kim Butler defined diaspora as a framework for study of specific process of community formation. Vertovec used to describe. So these are some definitions I picked up. Vertovec describe the population which is considered to be territorialized, and transnational. It's a group which is origin in a land other than the land in which they currently reside, and whose social, economic, and political networks across the border of nation states or indeed span the globe. So these networks form across nation states. They need not be in the same place, but across. What is this? Okay. Sheffer defined as modern diasporas, ethnic minority groups or migrant origins reside and acting in host country, but maintaining strong sentimental and material links with their countries of origin, their homelands. So that's another definition. Roger Brubaker more specifically applied three basic criteria: geographical dispersion, second, orientation to real or imagine, what Kim Butler talked about, third, maintenance of a social boundary corresponding to the conservative of a distinctive diasporic. So inevitably, here is a migrant which has gone and settled in a different place where culture is alien, and inevitably, to maintain their identity, they make this network with other people who are in that alien culture, but who identify them with a common homeland. And the formation of diasporic, communities are made. Uh, New perspectives term diaspora refers to immigrants who are tenuous and often nostalgic and imaginary perceptions of their homeland in the sense of dislocation or isolation. So these are new perspective. Tolayan pointed out that the term meant meaning of exile, loss, dislocation, powerlessness, and pain. And again, this powerless and pain, which initially originated from the studies on Jews and the Jewish diaspora, actually in the new perspectives are looked at as a source of power. Because when you are in an alien place, you come together for a network, in a network, and with these numbers, you are able to get power. So we will see that in the subsequent slides. Now serves as an exemplary communities of transnational movement. Exile, loss, and nostalgia are tropes of identity among earlier diasporas, whereas connections, simultaneity, hybridization, and flows are some of the concept of modern diaspora. Remember, today with internet, with social media, with 360-degree videos, that loss today, if I move away from a place of my home, I'm able to connect to my home and people in the home using FaceTime, using WhatsApp, using a video call. So how am I away? So there is this connection, simultaneity, hybridization, and flows. So there is a flow which has happened, that what we typically use in videos as streaming. So today there is a streaming connectivity. Alejandro Portas in his paper Globalization from Below. So globalization is a thing which is happening parallelly to nationalization. The rise of transnational communities, analyze the economic origins of the transnational communities. There's an economic project, transformation of immigrants into transnational communities. Because, inevitably today, if I was to travel, think of the fact there are credit cards, there are forex cards. So money is not a problem. Transportation is not a problem. It's a faster transportation. Connectivity is not a problem. There is super fast connectivity. There is a great sense of globalization, which and there is this tagline, globalization, it's making into a global village. Dense networks across space by increasing the number of people who lead double lives, moves easily between cultures. And you have apps which can translate languages. You can find things which can help you cook of your own culture frequently. And people are today frequently maintaining homes in two countries, economic, political, and cultural interests that require simultaneously present both. And then, of course, there is the metaverse, where virtually you can travel, you can have meetings, cross-cultural. Corporates are cross-cultural. Many reasons why self-defined diasporas have proliferated in recent times. Mass movement of people result are even more common now than in ancient worlds. Communication and transport technologies greatly facilitate international movement. Besides that, geopolitical repartitioning, restructuring of global economy, patterns of warfare create large refugees. Exiled population have all transformed the world. This is a repetition of what we did earlier. What are the root causes? Ethno-national communities are increasing, generating bodies of scholarly literature that adopt the construct of diaspora. So more often than not, it is like self-defining, I am a diaspora. That self-definition gives me power, because now I am connected to a larger set of people. I'm not alone. So people, let's say Indians or Pakistanis in, let's say, London or UK, define themselves as South Asian. Remember the fact we had already talked about Indians and the South Asians are not categorized as Asians. Asians are typically Chinese, Japanese, Filipinos. Filipinos is a separate category. That's what gives them the power. Oppressed people that may once have conceived of the situation in the context of majority minority are now embracing diasporan discourse as an alternative. That gives me power. I'm a diaspora. From earlier identification in which a sense of powerless, longing, exile, and displacement was strongly associated with Jews. So migrants have turned the whole concept of diaspora on its head, and instead of using it, looking at the concept as powerlessness, are looking at diaspora as a concept of power. Membership in a diaspora now implies a potential empowerment based on the ability to mobilize international support. So as soon as, let's say, Indians in the US call themselves Indian diaspora, they are not only now huge in numbers, they are also putting pressure on the homeland, which is India, that in case they are having a problem, then the country has to come to help them. Look at the students, Indian students stuck in Ukraine when the Ukraine-Russian war. Indian government had to step in to evacuate these students. Additionally, a good part of proliferation of the usage of the term diaspora is due to the current sexiness of the diaspora. So suddenly there are all these academic conferences, there is money in diasporic studies. And obviously, whenever this happens, this also leads to a movement where there is an emphasis on a particular subject. Specialists in other fields rush to capitalize on opportunities by recasting their work as diasporic. So that also is a reason why suddenly a lot of attraction towards migration and diasporic studies. Massive advancement in media, technology, transportation, capital movements enabled. Appadurai has done a fair amount of work on diasporic studies, and he's come out with these terms called the scape terms: the ethnoscape, mediascape, technoscape, financescape, ideoscape, to refer this multi-dimensional interconnection. So in the field of globalization and diaspora, Appadurai has some seminal work, and he has defined these scapes. And how does he, the suffix scape refers to unusual forms of this environment, which defines foreign capital as well as they define international fashion design. They are not objectively determined relationship. Rather, they are perspective structures that are shaped by culture, linguistic, and political situation of various types of actors. There are multiple actors which are at play. So suddenly, when somebody who, let's say, for example, India had never considered as an Indian or in any country excels, suddenly that person becomes an Indian origin person. You are almost defining him as an Indian diaspora. And the same happens not with India, with just about every country which tries and appropriates these people, because that helps them on the global stage, because these are situational. Global cooperation, diasporic society, subnational grouping, face-to-face classes. So let's look at Apodurai's definitions of ethnoscape, for example, all these scapes that he defined. Landscape of people who are shaping the changing environment: refugees, immigrants, tourists, exodus, guest workers, traveling community. Fantasy of movement has increased in recent years, with men and women from Indian villages to Dubai and Houston. Also remember, the men and women and the Indian villages are now able to access the world on their mobile phones. Mobile is a very common form of internet connection, and internet allows me to see the world. And why go to Mumbai or Pune, and why not to Dubai and Houston? Because now I have the way to do that. And the same with Sri Lanka, South Africa, Bangladesh, all parts of the world. Technoscape, global movement in technology. Technologies are moving. We are taking from each other. Multinational corporations are there, motivated by economic considerations, political possibility, labor supplies. Uh, and all these things are getting people to move. Financescape, citizens migrating, capital also migrating. Today, you can transfer money to any country using your internet banking, using your app. You can have a forex card, you can have a credit card, you can move about any place. Mediascape and ideoscape. So Appadurai says it's inextricably linked to photographs. How I look at the world. It is a dissemination of electronic capabilities for producing and disseminating content. See, inevitably, most of the information which I get is from media. The central argument: these photographs need complex conjugation based on their mode. So when I look at a particular thing, that particular thing brings out something based on my experience, based on my understanding, based on my knowledge, based on in the mode of production, on hardware, audience, and the interest of those who possess and manage them. So all these things change the way I look at things. For example, when an Indian makes a comparison and said, "Oh, these roads are so bad," he's obviously looking at pictures of somewhere else, and he's conjugating when this is and he's able to compare. Viewers take media in a convoluted manner, take them away from the immediate environment to an imagined. Karan Johar and his movies suddenly brought Indian middle class audience on a global stage. And Karan Johar's movies essentially targeted the Indian diaspora. And the Indian diaspora suddenly felt that, so he had a mix of traditional and modern, and somewhere down the line, it brought back memories of the old for some and the new for some. How you imagine universe where the boundaries between fact and fiction are blurred. Ideoscapes are often collages of photographs, frequently political in nature, concerned with establishment. Its ideological campaign aimed at seizing state control, composed of elements of liberty. So, when I look at photographs or I look at videos which are talking about a particular political philosophy or an ideology, then I get influenced by that. These interconnections were dubbed transnational flows of transnational links due to globalization. Now, this is what has happened. Okay, summing up. Migration defined as act of crossing an international border, relocating within a state, regardless of length, composition, or origin. Not a modern phenomena. Right from the time humans came on board this planet, diaspora is derived from Greek word I scatter, I spread about, composed of dia and sperio. Geopolitical partitioning, restructuring of global economy and patterns of warfare have changed. Very few people are today living in their land of their ancestors. Concept of diaspora did not figure prominently in social science till 60s. Seem to agree upon three basic features of diaspora. First, after dispersal, there will be a minimum of two destinations. There must be some relation to an actual or imagined homeland. They must be self-aware of the group's identity. Potential empowerment based on the ability to mobilize international support and influence in both homeland and home. So diaspora mobilization actually is situational. It is to do with the situation. It has to do with the condition. It is not a pre-established thing that a person migrates, it becomes a diaspora. Additionally, a good part of proliferation of the usage of the term diaspora is due to current sexiness of the discourse of diaspora studies in academia. Massive advancements in media technology, transportation, and capital have enabled continuous connectivity. Appadurai coined the terms ethnoscapes, mediascapes, technoscapes, finance-scapes, and ideoscapes to refer to multidimensional interconnections. And I picked up 3 out of other references. In fact, your SLM, 1 minute, let me just stop it out here. Stop. Let me put. Okay. Hi, guys. In fact, your SLM suddenly starts talking about the Indian diaspora, which has already been done in the earlier unit. So I have not picked it up. You can just go through it. But Indian diaspora is in a separate block of units, which we have done earlier. So I didn't take it up. And so, as I said, it automatically a migration does not lead to diaspora. There are conditions for mobilization. It is situational. It is not pre-existing. And, there are conditions by which, and today diasporic formations, unlike the earlier diasporic formations of hurt, of longing, of powerlessness, is looked at as being powerful, in terms of a network. Questions? Swadesh, many congratulations for the elections, though I did see that there's a lot to be done for independence. Swadesh?
Yeah, but the formula was not worked
No,
here.
Swadesh, elections is a whole new ball game. It's like an examinations. You might know the subject, you might know the concept, but there are so many factors which influence you securing good marks in an examination.
Yeah, yeah.
And elections are a much complex entity. Today, elections require a whole lot of money, muscle, to get across, to man booths. So, I did follow, your constituency. I remembered and I was telling everybody that Swadesh is also fighting an election.
Yeah,
And today, and, between, I personally feel that, irrespective of whatever politicians are or however they behave or whatever it is, I hold a very high esteem for politicians because it's crazy to try and sway communities into your point of view to getting them to vote for you and so on and so forth. But independents make a very important point because that's how the political parties are pushed into picking up mandates. It is complicated. It is definitely very complicated, and hats off to you for standing for an election.
yeah, yeah. Thank you.
I
I
hope
got
you
a B farm. Yeah.
I hope you not did not lose weight or increase your BP doing that.
Yeah, it's quite common, but I well prepared before
Good, good, good,
contesting
good,
in this election.
good, good, good. Maybe you should join a political party. Maybe you should join a political party
Yeah,
and
yeah. Already it was a B farm from All India Forward Bloc.
okay. See, because
Yeah, it's a,
I have turned around in my perspective of middle class youngsters to only look at, the conventional carriers. Politics is a very interesting and, upcoming career for youngsters. Why shouldn't the middle class and the youngsters not look at politics as a career? It's a wonderful career, is as good
yes.
a career as a corporate or a lobbyist or an NGO or anything. So why politics should be only left to the politicians? Why not middle class coming into my point of view? Nevertheless,
Yes, yes, you are right. I agree with you. It's a good beginning to
no,
me.
no, it's a great thing. It's a great beginning.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so Swadesh, the candidate from Telangana, is also a part of this class. So anytime you want to discuss politics, Telangana and diaspora and migration, Swadesh is a good candidate to discuss this out. Dev Pragya is a lawyer, so lawyering stuff, you can discuss it with her. Any other questions? 2024 elections aren't too far. That's right. Kangat, the way elections are, there are more elections coming in 2024. There's a national election, state elections, and so on and so forth. So it's fun all the way. So I hope with this, a larger clarity on the concept of diaspora has come about, because in a lot of units or in a lot of readings, there were a lot of gray areas on diaspora. And more often than not, more people, kept using these terms without understanding why is it a diaspora and why is it a migrant. So I hope that this presentation kind of cleared to a larger extent. Again, as I said, if anybody needs the presentation, you can send me a mail at dot. I put it in the chat, abhaychavla13 @duck.com. You can write a mail. I can send you the PPT. No questions asked. So you can do that. Any questions that you're feeling, anything that you like to add on?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, Dev Pragya.
I was just thinking about it. I mean, like, globalization, uh, does globalization induce diaspora?
See, globalization allows multiple people to travel to multiple destinations super fast. So now, initially, people who were diffident or, because of for a lesser modes of transport, they now are able to move. Besides that, once they move, they can easily connect back. See, more often than not, one fear that you always have in terms of movement, and especially for a longer movement, is the fact that you suddenly find yourself in an alien culture. But now you have ways to connect back And because of so many movements earlier, the institutions are there where once you go, there is a Indian, Indian institution in, let's say, any country that you go to, and you can straight away go and join that institution or that network. So obviously, it has encouraged more, and especially with businesses being, multinational, with finance being easily available, it only encourages more people to travel and more and better because then diaspora is looked as an advantage rather than a disadvantage. So more often than not, as soon as you migrate, you will get in touch with an Indian network and you become a diaspora.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it
I think it's
becomes.
also like,
Ah,
yeah, sorry.
you tell me. You
I
tell me.
can go later.
No, you go.
Okay, sir. So I was just thinking about the multinational corporations.
Hmm.
Uh, I think, yeah, you are right in saying that, because then eventually the diaspora again becomes very strong, and they have multiple stakes in the homeland and all of it. So I think that is why, at least for Indian diaspora, uh, you know, in the US, so they invest in elections and, yeah, MNCs majorly.
So, say for example, look at the fact that if I was to look at, let's say, between boys and girls, earlier, the security aspect or the connectivity aspect for young girls to travel for extended stay in work was a sense of anxiety for parents, especially from the physical security point of view. But now you'll see a large body or a large number of young girls going out and working in multinationals, taking foreign postings, staying there for a longish time. So obviously, this globalization, this connectivity, this fast travel is aiding that movement, and also the networks in terms of connectivity. And then once they go out there, they connect with the larger institutions and networks already there. So it aids in the diasporic formation, because also every country or every community or every nationality has realized that there is power in numbers.
Hmm, that's
So
true.
I was reading this thing about, and also understand, we do not have single identities, we have multiple identities. So I was reading this article in which Kim Butler was giving this example of this Jamaican in London, who is not only a part of the Jamaican diaspora, but also is a part of the Caribbean diaspora and a part of an African diaspora.
Hmm.
So there are multiple identities, and individuals now have a choice of picking up whichever identity which benefits them in that particular situation.
Hmm.
So so that is where this and that's where diasporic mobilization is situational,
Yeah.
rather than a pre-existing, that as soon as, and then there is an option of the fact that a lot of people who went from, let's say, here to Guyana or to Suriname do not want to consider themselves as Indian at all or Indian diaspora, but of that countries, because that gives them a situational advantage, rather than being say that you are an Indian, oh, you are an Indian, you are an outsider. So they want to be called as an American or a Surinamese. So it gives them a situational advantage. So that's
Yeah.
how individuals move, the identities move.
Yes.
Okay. Any other question? Sir, tell me about assignment. What about assignment, Praful? Praful, what about assignment? Have you seen the assignment questions? There is a booklet on assignments. Okay. So if you see the booklet and the assignments, a good way to go about is, if you have any doubt in answering or looking up an SLM, you can always Google search to get a rough idea. But the most of the SLMs are able to give you, and then you can add knowledge. Always remember, internet is skewed medium, so always cross-check on sources. Do not pick up any sources. Wikipedia is a great place to be, but make sure it is, the references which are given are cross-checked. Because remember, internet is an anonymous and a virtual medium. Anybody can put in information which could be wrong. If you're using ChatGPT gives erroneous results on research topics. Do not use ChatGPT. It can cook up stories, and such fantastic stories that you might be taken in by those stories. They are all false. So always cross-check academic research. Always cross-check. Always cross-check your sources. Cross-link your sources to see whatever is being said is true. Otherwise, you will, a lot of people have started using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gives crazy answers, all wrong, especially research. If you say, give me references, they will give you all wrong references. So understand computers work on the way it has been programmed. If you wrong program it, you'll get wrong results. Any other questions? Okay. So in case there are not any questions, we'll meet next Saturday. Next Saturday, we are studying on transnationalism and citizenship. Now, this gets interesting because now we are, we are doing intersectionality reading. There is political science, there is civics, there is history, and of course, there is anthropology, geography, and all that stuff. And how perspectives change. And again, remember the fact that a whole lot of research is still Western-based research. Our body of work is still lesser. I hope, inevitably nations become great by academics, by research, by more research, uh, whatever. So unless the global south does more research, come with more body of research, we'll always be, guided by the Western research or the Western point of view. But that's a start.
Sir, hello.
It's not mandatory to
Uh,
ask a question in English, Praful. You can ask. There are two languages, English or Hindi. You can ask. I do not know
uh,
any other language.
Sir, sorry
Shreya.
to interrupt you.
Sure, Shreya, bol.
Yes, sir. I have a question. Sir, is it possible to conduct the class at 4 p.m. Instead of 3 p.m. because I'm working and my office ended at 3 p.m. and after that Mm, uh, I have to pursue the class. So, is it possible to host the class on 4 p.m. instead of 3 p.m., sir? Is it possible?
Shreya, you can ask it in the group. Are you a part of are you a part of the WhatsApp group of the
Yes, sir.
students?
Yes,
So
yes,
why
sir.
don't you just talk to the students? If three is a
Okay,
problem, then maybe we can do 3:30. But again, the large number of students need to agree because it's
okay,
a Saturday. People might have their own schedules. If you say four, I'll take a class from 4 to 5. I have no problem either which way. Or
okay,
earlier,
sir.
I have no problem. So as long as the large body of students decide, I'm okay with it.
Okay,
And
sir.
then
Okay, sir.
and then you can simultaneously consult Sada sir, because he's the one
Okay,
who does the the scheduling or the larger logistics. I'm just the guy who comes and keeps speaking on the camera.
okay, sir. And then I will connect with them. Okay,
ठीक है. And Praful,
okay, sir.
you can ask in English या Hindi. I do not unfortunately know any language. Even my Punjabi is very bad. I mean, I hardly know it. So English and Hindi are दो ही भाषाएं मुझे आती हैं. तो अगर but unfortunately in Hindi there will be a lot of people who may not understand Hindi. You can also type your questions. That way, we are still communicating. प्रफुल्ल, आप टाइप भी कर सकते हैं. In fact, you can, I'm giving you my number. I'm not on WhatsApp. You can send me a question in Hindi and English as a voice note on. I am on Telegram and Signal as a messaging app, or you can send me a voice note as a mail. I can answer you that. Praful, जिसमें आप comfortable हो. So the idea is being comfort. Language is not the point. Language is only a medium. आप इंग्लिश में पूछ सकते हैं. You can ask me in English, you can ask me in Hindi. If you ask me in Hindi, I will translate it for the people who do not understand Hindi into English. Idea is that we are able to communicate rather than worry about the language. And local languages people can translate for each other. You can be in touch with each other. If there is a certain particular problem, you can ask me offline or online, whatever. Idea is that we talk. Okay. Okay. I think if there is no other question, we have reached the end of time. Have a nice weekend and enjoy yourself. And I'll see you next Saturday at 3 o'clock. Shreya, talk to the group and talk to Sada sir and figure out the time.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. I
Okay.
will